in most of my planes, I actually find that the cap iron is a bit of a hindrance. And that's because in most of my planes, it's not actually doing anything other than adding an extra process to the sharpening. You see, with a wooden plane like this, where it's just got the single iron, it's got no cap iron. A cap iron's also known as a chip breaker, just to keep the terminology similar there. But this is just a single iron plane. It can also be called a double iron plane. If it's a back iron, that's another name for it. But yeah, that's a single iron plane, just a wedge and then the stock. So to sharpen that, all I have to do is clump it on the back of the bench. The iron and the wedge come out. I can rub that about a bit on the stone and put it back together. It is moments of time to get that going. It's like a chisel. Sharpening a chisel, there's nothing easier. Something like this here has the double iron, the cap iron. I have to take it to bits. I have to rummage in my pocket for a copper to unscrew the cap iron. And then I do my sharpening. I've got to set it all up. I'm trying to not nick the eye. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. That's why they annoy me. And if I could have it my way, I would have all of my roughing to medium planes with just a single iron, because it's quicker, it's easier. Now, not everybody is always going to agree with what I say. I mean, I'm well aware of the infinite ways and different approaches that pretty much every bloody job in woodworking seems to have. But any advice I give, whether in these videos or on our blog, it comes from my experience on what puts sort of food on my table, I suppose. It's from my training, what I was shown, and that's really what I do it for. I like to do my blog and these videos to just pass on a little bit of what I know and hope that it can help others. So what I'm showing here is not the be-all and end-all. You may have your own approach, stand by it, stick to it if it works. Don't change if you're happy. But with that said, I want to move on to the positive of the cap iron. And it really, to me, makes a smoothing plane, particularly a cheap plane. It turns a cheap plane like this into a super smoother. You don't need to worry about high angles. We don't have to worry about tight mouths. I mean, you can see how open that mouth is, very open. And bloody hell, for smoothing, I should be shot for having a mouth that wide. But still, you'll see in a minute. So I've got this plane. This is just a number 3. And I've got this other Stanley. I think that's a 4. Both of these planes work tremendously well. They're both set up the same. They've both got flat soles. I use them both daily. They're lovely planes. I have set both of them up with one little difference. And that is that I've set the cap iron marginally further back on this number 4. On this plane, on the number 3, I've got it set to how I would want it if I looked at a piece of wood and thought, oh no, that's going to be a sod. That's how I would set it. And I wanted to just show the difference on what a cap iron can make. And well, you'll see for yourself. I'm not going into bloody high angle, tight mouth, bloody super smoothers here. I just want, this is just on the cap iron. So I've got this bit. Now I've just dug this out the firewood pile. It's not the worst piece of wood in the world, I know. But I know full well if I touched this with a normal plane set up normally, it's going to tear. We can see there's a great big knot there. There's a tremendous amount of reversing grain there. And it's kiln dried ash. And kiln dried ash is a pain in the arse at the best of times. It is approaching us as well back here. So we'll plane them with both and see what happens. To be honest, I know what's going to happen because I've already tested it with this plane and it works a treat. We'll see. Wax it up. Now remember, this is the one with a cap iron set with a bit more time. So you can hear the difference when we approach that nasty stuff. It sounds horrible. Wait till you see it. Now I'm looking at that as close as I bloody can, and there is not a speck of tear. And this is where I always say it, I know, I wish I could somehow make the cameras see what I'm seeing, because you just can't quite get it. But I'll get a close-up later. I'll do it again and get a nice close-up. But you can see, hopefully, there is nothing there. There's no tear. You see all the darker and lighter colours as you're going against the grain. I mean, some of that darker stuff is because we're almost on end grain. That's how hard it's coming up at us. Get rid of that bugger. Now this has been sharpened to the same standard. Like I say, the only difference is that cap iron is set back just a smidge more. So far, so good. Just let it level out. Sometimes with a plane, you've got to take a few shavings just to get it beyond the previous plane. Oh yeah, did you hear that? Oh, that's going to plague me. Oh. It doesn't matter. Even though you plan to do this, it still hurts. We've even tore up. I wasn't expecting it actually to tear that far up. That is terrible. It's chipped completely out there. When that happens, it's bugging, because you've really got to lower that area to remove it. I bet you can't see it. There, it's terrible. You see, it's actually chipped a chunk off. You can hear that. That's the step it's created. So, I mean, that kind of says it to me. It's, you know, I bet we can get that out with this. Let's have a go. So you can see with that shaving how it's gone over the tear. You see, and it's made it all scraggly. That's because it couldn't take a full shaving, because there was nothing to take. Right, let's just get this down. And I've almost removed that nasty bit. Back gone again. See, back up here it's fine. Got rid of all of that. So I'll show you now, I mean, this is bloody risky. If you know much about planing, don't skew the plane on something coarse like that. You watch. So we're able to gain ease of planing. We're not a single bit of tear out. Do anything you like. A kid could plane this. If I did that with this, I mean, it'd be hell to pay. But that shows what the cap iron can do. It just doesn't care about the opening of that mouth. So what on earth is that simple piece of steel doing? And that's all it is really. It's just that little bit of metal that sits on top of the iron. And what I was taught, what I was shown, when you do the dad, what's this do? Is it's basically creasing the shaving. It's bending it, and through that bending, obviously you think of well, think of my finger. If you bent it the wrong way, you'd compress the top of it, wouldn't you? The bottom would stretch, the top would compress. It's Well, I've got a good example here. We'll pick a suitable one. I'll say that one. Let's say that's a fibre of wood. That's just one fibre running through the board. As usual, it normally looks like that. You never get one that's nice and straight, do you? So let's bring our plane iron through, our plane blade through. And for the sake of it, let's just say we've got a relatively open mouth, just to make it a bit easier to explain. So my mouth is where my finger is. The iron's going to come along. It's going to be cutting. It's cutting so nice. As it cuts, it's going to end up obviously inevitably getting under a piece of grain, or it's going to cut into that piece of grain. And you can see how as it pulls, as we feed, it's putting pressure, it's bending, and I can feel the force in this finger. It wants to break it, and if I keep pushing it, it breaks. So what we've done is we've ripped out that fibre, and everything's stuck to it and everything above it. And that's just been planed into the shaving. And we've left an awful bloody divot we've got to repair. Now what the cap iron does is it adds this really high angle to the mix. And if that is, you've truly got to be a gnat's nadger back off the cutting edge. You literally just want light to reflect on it. That's why it's useless on anything for coarse cutting, anything with a camber on it, because you're not going to be able to get it close to the cutting edge. You've got to have, just such a microscopic amount of camber on your smoothing plane, and then it works tremendously well. Get it right up close, and it adds this edge and this high angle. And what it's basically doing is it's bending the shaving right over itself and into itself. I mean, it's not breaking like that. This is because it's a bloody twig, but it's basically folding it. It's putting tiny folds on it. It's taking all the integrity, the strength out of that fibre. Therefore, it can't lift because it's being crumpled as it goes. So it can't lift and break it out. And that's what it's doing. And that's why it's irrelevant to the mouth opening, because it doesn't need that. A very tight mouth can eradicate tear out, but the trouble is with a tight mouth is it's a super hot wear spot. And every time your shaving's feeding through, it's rounding that mouth over, and it'll matter of a few shavings and you already start moving it back out again. It's a hard upkeep, a tight mouth. Now I'm going to wait for some questions to come in on this, and we may do a detailed blog post on this to try and detail it a bit more, maybe with some nice drawings. But we have got a video coming out very soon, and we're going to try and push it out as fast as we can. And I'm going to take you through the steps of getting a new iron and a cap iron. Basically, it's just out of a Stanley plane. Helen's got herself a little number 3, and we're going to tune that. I'm going to tune that up for her, or show her how to do it. And I want to show you the work and how I work a cap iron and how I make it work. Basically, we're going to go through every step. So if you subscribe, as they say. And if you wait for that, I'll... that was a bit bad.
I don't think you finished the sentence, but we could bring it into black.
Yeah, that'll do. So I've just taken another few strokes just to try and get some clearer footage of that tear. So I hope you can see it a bit better. And again, I'm just going to clean that back up now with that number 3, with the cap iron set right. Now I'm going to be a complete wazzock and set that depth right in. I want a nice deep cut here. And you see, nothing still happens. Even though the plane is fighting me. It just doesn't have the camber on it to take this sort of depth of cut. There's still no tear. And one more, just to be a complete and utter idiot, we'll use that same depth, but now we'll skew the plane. And again, no tear. You can't make it tear out, it just won't. And I think that, you know, with that knowledge, if you can take that and apply it, you can say goodbye to scrapers. I never scrape. The planes are always the last thing to touch my work.